We've been exploring some lights. We've been exploring some mediums. We're going to jump into heavies with this matrix in that heavy mechs now have enough tonnage. We've got enough tonnage that after I put in the systems, the fusion engine, heat sinks, all that type of stuff, I can have some decent armor where I could take a couple of hits. I can have a variety of weapon systems to engage targets or specialize the mech or push that out. And I've got the armor to back it up. So we've got enough tonnage to play with. So what we see with now heavy mechs is the question that I'm posing to you as a mech warrior, as a mech commander. Would you prefer, or I should say, what's the tactica for heavy mechs that are designed to engage at every range, which I would say is probably one of the better ways to design a heavy mech. We sidebarred last week. I pushed up to the Battletech playlist here. We were exploring light mech building, and we're getting into a little bit of mech tech and mech building. So with that tonnage, with a heavy mech, if I can have redundancy on multiple ranges and multiple brackets, that means I can engage at those ranges. I can have an answer, an effective answer for all those ranges. And then on top of that, I can try to engage my opponent in the range of the bracket that they are not strong at. Or do you take all that tonnage, and I don't want to say do the lulls, but do you take all that tonnage and specialize in one thing? Essentially try to overload that one area and bring it against your opponent, which if you can do that, all that battle value is just going to absolutely decimate them. But at the same time, that leaves you vulnerable to everything else. So let's explore kind of the two. Let's look at the Warhammer. Love the Warhammer. Chances are if you're facing me on the hex map, I'm going to have a Warhammer. I'm going to have a Marauder. Probably going to have a Rifleman. Maybe a Crusader. The Warhammer at long range has those PPCs. It's got two. It can fire it out. So we can engage targets reliably at long range. Yes, we've got heat issues. We've got some other tactica issues. I've pushed all that up to the playlist here. We've got some reviews for the Warhammer. We're looking past that for a moment. We're just looking at this idea of a concept. So I can engage you with both those PPCs if you're at long range. If I get myself into a position of cover, I can fire away. If there's some light mechs dancing around, I can take those shots. You don't want to get tagged by a PPC. I can engage you at long range, so there's an incentive. Maybe you don't want to stay at that range. So you either pull back or now you close. Now, as you close and the ranges get closer and closer, I've got medium lasers. I can start engaging with that. As we get closer, I've got small lasers. I've got machine guns. I've got short-range missile packs. You have a variety of weapons to optimally engage at each range. So if that means if you're a close-in mech, a close-in fighter, I will try to backpedal. I will try to stay at range and keep on hitting you with those PPCs. If you're more of a long-range mech, then I will try to close. On the way in, I've got the PPCs. Then I'll try to close, try to engage those weapons. I can also engage a variety of different targets. So we've got the tonnage to mount long, medium, and short-range weapons. That's very effective. If you find yourself in any situation, you're at least going to be able to hold your own. And then hopefully tactically you can push that advantage to a place where your opponent is weak. That is one way to design heavy mechs. And I think we see a lot of those mechs really incorporate that. Looking at the Marauder, similar idea, PPCs, autocannon, medium lasers. Now, it doesn't have really short end work in terms of small lasers and missile packs, but those medium lasers can be engaged at both medium range and short range. So we've got the tonnage, the redundancy, and the weapon systems to do that. Now, what if we take that battle value and we just crank it all in one direction? I'm looking at the longbow as a really great example. The primary weapons where it engages are those two 20-packs LRMs and two 5-packs. If I can stay at range and I've got some cover and I fire away, direct fire would be better, but even indirect, that's absolutely punishing. I'm taking all that tonnage, all that battle value, and just trying to punish you with that every single turn. But if you close, I'm no match. I mean, I've got the close-in work possibly of a light mech. So this idea of the two areas with your heavy mechs going something with all range brackets or going in extremely, extremely specialized. Now, the Layover Tactica, obviously it's adjusted depending on the mech. The Layover Tactica here is, if I take a specialized heavy mech, then what this means is I've already invested some battle value into that. I'm probably going to need some sort of support system for that. Perfect example, usually when I run 2 or 3 longbows, that's a tremendous fire base. That is just real-time hundreds of missiles raining down on you. But I need something to prevent you from just literally rushing up and closing. I take some Demolisher tanks. Autocannon 20s, 2 on a turret, good armor, radius of the turret, and it just parks there and waits, dares you to get close. Sometimes I'll also take a Thunderbolt, possibly put a T-Bolt there. This idea of something needs to protect those longbows. That's more battle value. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's more battle value. Where if I take this example, well, the longbow actually was an assault mech. That wasn't quite a fair example. Maybe we push it down to an archer, although an archer is a little bit different. If we take that example of a Warhammer, now what we're looking at is this idea of, yes, I would like to be supported. I'm part of a lance, and if I'm part of a lance, then I'm going to bring my talents with me with that machine, meaning if I'm part of a lance and the lance has some long-range hitting firepower, maybe we've got an archer in there or a rifleman, I'm going to magnify that. I'm going to add my PPCs and magnify to that. If I find myself in a situation where I can take advantage of something, right? I'm walking up and there's a short-range missile carrier that appears, fires off at something else, and now I can close to point-blank range and just blast that missile carrier in one turn, blowing away its motive hits, taking it from rear armor. The Warhammer can do that. It's got answers for everything. So in that moment of a dynamic battlefield, if you find yourself in that position and you can catch it, that really, really works. So this idea of one or the other, and it's not necessarily good or bad, but understanding what the mech design is as we move into those heavier tonnages so we don't get taken by surprise and how that operates. Now, turning it over to my fellow mech commanders, mech warriors, mech enthusiasts, how do you prefer your heavy mechs? And what would be an example of a heavy mech machine that you really enjoy playing regularly?